Hello and welcome to the Dino Six Pack Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm your host Jordan Schultz, and I'll be going at it solo today. We're getting towards the end of a rookie draft season, so it's kind of time to take a step back and really take a look at how this incoming rookie class fits in with the rest of the NFL. And the first exercise I like to do after each draft is I like to just take a step back and just look at how this rookie class compares to last year's rookie class and kind of put those into like my ranks for Dynasty. And then from there, I kind of expand out. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started here with the top 20 wide receivers. Before we get going, though, make sure you hit like and subscribe to get more content like this. We just did the top 20 running backs combined ranks a couple days ago. Make sure you go back and check that out. We also got like a ton of team preview stuff coming out over on the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube channel. So yeah, make sure to subscribe and like, get more content like this. With that being said, let's go ahead and get this going. So coming in at number one for me, this may be a slightly controversial take, but I'm going to go with Chris Olave. He was wide receiver 25 last year, went for over 1,000 yards, and really had this horrible quarterback play. Looking at this year, Derek Carr, he is like a real grown-up and NFL quarterback who can make the passes that need to be made on the NFL level. If Michael Thomas comes back healthy, that really is just going to help open things up for Olave to operate more. I think the days of Michael Thomas being like the surefire wide receiver one for them are over. Olave is the guy right now. Looking at what he did last year, Olave had over 14 yards per catch. He only saw 119 targets. Just for reference, like Garrett Wilson saw 147 last year. So I do think there's room for the volume to go up slightly, and I do think that the quality of passes he'll be getting are going to be better. So I think that the wide receiver 25 mark is kind of like his like floor, and that would be like if he got like injured or missed some time. Moving on to number two, this is a guy I know a lot of people have at number one, and that's going to be Garrett Wilson with the Jets. When he got the quarterback we all wanted him to get this offseason, catching passes from Aaron Rodgers now. Last year he had 83 catches and 1,100 yards. That's probably his floor for this year. As long as things don't fall apart like they did in Green Bay last year, that should be pretty close to his floor. Added, Allen Lazard and McCall Hardman. Shouldn't really limit his upside too much. Like similar to like Olave, Garrett Wilson is a guy. He's my locked and loaded number two. And this is where I think there's a little bit of a tier break down to the next group. Number three, we got Drake London, the last receiver. Actually, not the last receiver. Three of the four first-round receivers from last year's rookie draft here make the top three spots. Okay, so like I said, I have him in tier two and ranked below Olave and Wilson. That being said, if I could take Olave or Wilson, flip it for Drake London, and then get another asset or two with it, that's something that I'm very much interested in doing. Marcus Mariota last year was just not good. Like, he was one of the most inaccurate passers. It's just a slight upgrade this year to Desmond Ridder, I think, is going to be wonderful for Drake London in his fantasy game. Players that get that type of target share just don't fail. I know a lot of people are saying, like, oh, the target share was there and he didn't do anything with it. But, like, I can't overstate, like, how bad Mariota was last year. I do believe Ridder's going to be a little bit of a step up. Projection, I haven't completely finished it, but first projection through with Atlanta, I have him coming up a little short of 1,100 yards, around 6 to 7 touchdowns, 85 to 90 catches. Like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic on the Falcons and Ridder. I think they have some great weapons to operate. I think Pitt's floor that you'll ever see was last year. So if we get a little bit more out of him, it's just going to open things up more for Drake London. So he's the guy that I could see jumping the most from this list. And like, if you told me he was number one next year at this time, that wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to me. Moving down to number four, we have our first rookie from this year, and that's Jackson Smith-Njigba with the Seattle Seahawks. He would have probably been number two, maybe three on my list if he landed in like 25 other teams. But DK Metcalf, he is like a legit wide receiver one over there. Tyler Lockett's a very good player. He's been one of the most consistent players like the last 5 to 6 years. Long-term, love the outlook. He's one of the most talented players in the class. But I do think it may be 2 to 3 years before you really see him have a chance to get that target share and just dominate the targets and really put up those huge fantasy years. Could be wrong there, but I do think it'll be more of like a end of the first season. You'll kind of start to see some flashes of him really kind of taking over that wide receiver 2 role. Then you go into next year, and that's like when him and DK, I think, get a little bit more close to 50-50 as like who's the wide receiver one there in Seattle. Moving on to number 5, another rookie from this year's class, my guy Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings. I cannot wait to see who does operating across from the best wide receiver in football this year. He is going to just absolutely eat in like the intermediate fields, the short areas of the field. I wouldn't be shocked if he's like a startable flex player by the end of this first season here. My clear wide receiver 2 in this rookie class, he was there before the draft, and the landing spot, you really could have drawn up too many better places. Obviously, you have Jefferson there, but I think that's a good thing for him because I don't think Jordan Addison ever really profiles as like that alpha wide receiver one. But this team has no real wide receiver two. I mean, KJ Osborne's there. I don't think he's anything special. I think that by the second half of this season, you're seeing Jordan Addison come in. That's clear second option in the passing game, maybe even ahead of TJ Hawkinson. All right, from here, we have another tier break for me. We're at number 6 now. We're going to head over to Green Bay with Christian Watson. I would say he is arguably like the biggest boom bust guy on this list so far. I feel really confident of the 5 guys ahead of him. Watson's whereas like, hey, if you told me like last year was one of his better years, I wouldn't be completely surprised just because anytime you go from Aaron Rodgers to someone else, that's a pretty big downgrade. He did show some big flashes last year, and that is why I do have him up here at 6. Like he showed enough that I'm confident buying in, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But he had 41 catches last year, 611 yards, and he put up 7 touchdowns, and it felt like he really only kind of played half the season, even though he was there longer. Just didn't really get a ton of work, wasn't very consistent in the passing game there. But this year, it looks like he should be like the unquestioned wide receiver 1 for Jordan Love. And honestly, like once he got the ball in his hands and turned into a runner, I don't think there was a more explosive player in last year's rookie class than Christian Watson. So, I mean, hopefully he takes that next step forward and Jordan Love can just come in and be 70% of Aaron Rodgers this first year. And then this rank will look comically low and he should have been up probably closer to 3 or 4. But for now, we're going to leave him at number 6 and kind of the top of the 3rd tier out of these receivers we're talking about today. Coming down to number 7, we got Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. I love Zay Flowers, and I think that by the end of this year, he's going to be like the wide receiver 1 on this team, obviously outside of Mark Andrews, but the wide receiver 1 in terms of drawing targets. He's smaller, very explosive after the catch, similar to kind of what I just said about Christian Watson there. Biggest issue I could see for Flowers is he had 9 drops last year, so he definitely needs to clean that up. Like that many drops is a quick way to find yourself on the bench pretty quickly. Obviously, Bateman and OBJ are probably the more talented players at this time, but neither of them are safe bets to stay healthy, and I don't even necessarily know that Bateman is better than Zay Flowers, or even OBJ at this point. He's coming off a knee surgery. He's, wrong side of 30. I think Zay Flowers, like I said, end of this first season, I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in targets there in Baltimore. Moving down to number 8, we got Quentin Johnston. Starting off, he's going to operate behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But the 3rd wide receiver in the Kellen Moore offense will have weeks of fantasy production. I think he was a bit of a boom bust prospect coming in, but he really did land in an ideal situation to kind of come on slowly and develop. Could be a little bit of a slow burn, but I wouldn't be shocked if by going into year 2, like they're kind of talking about him stepping in as like the main focal point of the passing game in San Diego, or excuse me, I guess Los Angeles now. I was a throwback there. Kellen Moore, man, he's a great offensive coordinator. I'm really bummed that our Cowboys lost him this year, and I think that everybody in Los Angeles for the Chargers is going to have a big year in fantasy this year playing underneath Kellen. Going ahead and moving on to number 9, Jameson Williams. Man, the suspension sucks. And like the more and more details that come out about it, just the dumber and dumber it seems. I mean, the track record of guys that have missed this many games for any reason just to start their career, it isn't awesome. I mean, it just really isn't. But his playing style really does kind of complement Amon-Ra St. Brown pretty well. And this could be like we could be in the middle of a buy low window that we may never see again if he comes back in and just hits the ground running in that offense there. Moving on to number 10, we got George Pickens. I mean, last year we all saw the crazy catches, over 15 yards per catch. He's a big deep threat down the field. I think this year he'll have a pretty clear path to like the wide receiver 2 targets there behind Deontay Johnson. Talking about PPR leagues, like Deontay is definitely the guy I want there this year. But looking down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if going into year 3 and on, we're talking about George Pickens as like the main guy there. He had 800 yards and 4 score. I mean, that's way below his flow if he stays on the field this year. I think Pickett will take a little bit of a step forward. So yeah, George Pickens coming in at number 10, and this is where I have another tier break here. Moving on to number 11, we got Treylon Burks of the Tennessee Titans. So I was a little bit lower on him coming into the league than everybody else was, and the landing spot was terrible. It went about how I thought it would last year. I mean, even a little bit worse. Like I didn't have high expectations for him there anyways. Looking at it this year, he is the clear wide receiver 1 on this team. But for fantasy, I don't know how much work that's going to translate into really. It could be a rough year there all around. I mean, the talent is undeniable, and I could be missing out. Like I don't have him in any leagues at his current cost. But he is like the one receiver of this group that I'm fading a lot more than the other people that I've read ranks and stuff like that. Moving on to number 12, we got Jahan Dotson. And this is another guy that I think could take a huge step forward this year. Could look pretty low on this list compared to where he is now. Last year, 20% of his catches went for touchdowns, 7 scores on 35 catches. Finished, like, I think, wide receiver 48 on 61 targets. Each of the 7 wide receivers ahead of him in fantasy points all had 90 targets. So he was right in that same network as kind of like a back-end wide receiver 4, but on like 2/3 of the target is all the guys around him there. So I do think there's room for him to really go up there. He's going to be working behind Terry McLaurin this year, but I do think that he's like going to be a pretty solid flex play this year. I'm in on Sam Howell. I do think the Commanders are going to be pretty improved this year. And I think Dotson's going to be kind of a sneaky guy that potentially could have some league-winning value depending on where you're getting him and what kind of trades you get for him. Another tier break here, and then we move on to number 13. We got Rashee Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think you could have picked a better landing spot. I mean, I know we have fallen for this before, but I think Rice will be like kind of that day 2 wide receiver they've been hoping they've tried to get the last few times that they've drafted there, and it just hasn't worked out. Final season at TCU went for 1,300 yards and 10 scores. I think by the end of this first year, like behind Travis Kelce, he's like the pretty clear wide receiver one off in this offense here for the Chiefs. A lot of people really like Kadarius Toney. I'm skeptical that he's able to stay on the field and really be more than just like a 3 to 4 big play a game type guy. Rice is the guy I'm trying to buy right now while he still gets a little bit of a discount before he steps on the field and then shows a little bit of chemistry with Patrick Mahomes, and then you'll see his price skyrocket there. Moving on to number 14, we got Jonathan Mingo of the Carolina Panthers. He has a chance to kind of step in and be Bryce Young's option right away. Apologize about the dog in the background there. He's just trying to talk, I guess. But Jonathan Mingo was not overly productive in college there. Last year there only had 860 yards and 5 touchdowns, but his body type, he's 6'1", 220 pounds. It gives him the best bet to secure the end zone targets pretty much right away. Not a ton of competitions on this roster outside of Adam Thielen and I guess DJ Chark's there. So I think he's going to see a good amount of work in year 1. I wasn't the biggest believer on him in the draft, so I was a little bit surprised to see him get drafted. I thought he was more of like a round 3, round 4 guy. But I mean, situations and opportunities are one of the biggest things you need in fantasy, and it looks like he's going to have that. So yeah, Jonathan Mingo there at 14. Number 15, we got Josh Downs. He kind of comes in and he's like going to profile as that prototypical slot receiver. And another guy that I think has a chance to contribute in year 1. The Colts let Paris Campbell go. So, I mean, really the slot should be wide open. And I think that's kind of where he's going to step in and just seamlessly transition and be a nice target there for Anthony Richardson. That being said, Anthony Richardson's developed could be a little bit on the slow end in terms of the passing game, but when he does finally become comfortable, I think Downs is a guy that you're going to want outside of Michael Pittman there for the Colts. So maybe this is a guy that you wait till week 2 or 3 if they start a little bit slow, then you send out a couple second-round offers for him, see if you can get it for cheap, and then I think end of the first year and definitely moving into year 2, he's a guy that's going to be very, very good. Moving down to number 16, we got Green Bay Packers again. We got Jayden Reed. Reed was not overly productive that last year at Michigan State. 55 catches, but only had 630 yards and 5 scores. That being said, he kind of has a chance to step into the wide receiver 2 role immediately behind Christian Watson this year as a rookie. However, again, we have Jordan Love at quarterback. I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain 2 wide receivers for fantasy, but I do think that he has the best bet at getting the second most targets on the team. Moving down to number 17, and this is another tier break, and this will be kind of our last tier here for these last 4 guys here. So number 17, we got Tank Dell with the Houston Texans. He was a guy that I was pretty high on pre-draft, and then, their number 2 pick, CJ Stroud, he came out, handpicked this receiver, and the Texans listened and went and got their guy for him. Massively production his last season in Houston, had 109 catches, over 1,300 yards and 17 scores. Straight up video games numbers. Like, he was dominant there for the Houston Cougars. Really similar to Jonathan Mingo, there's not a lot of competition on this team for targets, and I wouldn't be shocked if you see him have 70 catches as a rookie. And at that point, if that does come true, this ranking is going to look a little bit low. Only reason I'm a little skeptical is just I think that this Texans offense could be a little bit of a struggle this first year before they kind of get their footing and really get going in future years. Number 18, we got my guy Cedric Tillman for the Cleveland Browns. I think the tape from not this past year, but the year before that was massively impressive. His numbers were down his final year, but he was fighting through injury. Never really looked right, but was still able to finish with 400 yards and 3 scores. He profiles as that big body outside receiver. Like, he's not a burner by any means, but I do think that he's a guy that can go up, get jump balls and win in the end zone for you. Has an uphill battle to get on the field in year 1. He's got Jonathan Peoples-Jones ahead of him, David Bell. He's got to try and beat out there. But I do think he's a guy that I think in a couple of years could develop into a nice target for Deshaun Watson. Coming in at number 19, we got Jalen Hyatt of the New York Giants. This looking at it right now, he has a ton of competition on this team, and he is by far the most explosive option on the roster, though. True deep threat, had over 1,200 yards and 15 scores that last year at Tennessee. Again, Cedric Tillman wasn't on the field, so I think those numbers were inflated a little bit. I think had he been there, they would have been a little bit closer on the numbers here. But that being said, he did average almost 19 yards per catch. So like he is that deep threat that can get down the field and stretch things for you. Only had 1 year of production, so that kind of has a little bit of risk there. But he has a skill set that if it translates, there's no other receiver on the Giants that can match this type of skill set. Coming in at number 20, our last guy here on the list today is Marvin Mims of the Denver Broncos. If he can come in and hold off KJ Hamler for that slot receiver role, like he should be able to get a decent amount of targets this first year in the Sean Payton offense. We're not talking like that 70 to 100 target range as like some of the guys earlier, but he could easily get that 40 to 60 range, I think, in year one. And maybe have some deeper, like 16 team and deeper league flex value. Ideally, though, like the rumors of one of Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy being traded needs to come true for him to really have a chance at a big role this year. But he is a guy that I think could have a lot of value in that second year, and there could be a buy low window during this first year. If he takes a little bit to get on the field and earn a role in this offense. Very explosive in the passing game last year, averaged over 20 yards per catch and was able to get over the 1,000-yard mark. 6 scores. So, I mean, he was very productive in college, and he has a skill set that neither Sutton or Jeudy have. So, it's Sean Payton's first receiver he picked with this group, so maybe he sees a role for him and he'll carve something out for him right away. And this rank will look super low. But for now, I'm pretty comfortable with him at number 20, rounding out this list here today. All right, guys. That being said, I appreciate you guys all tuning in here. We'll have some new shows. This will be our last ranking show that we'll do for a while. The next few we have planned are kind of more strategy based and just more team building based as opposed to just like straight player ranks like we've been doing. That being said, make sure to like and subscribe, see more content like this. Leave a comment. You can find me on Twitter. Handle is right here at Dino NFL. A lot of people says, nobody cares about your fantasy team. Well, I actually do. So if you have some, questions, should I make this trade? What do you think about this roster? Feel free to hit me up and I will get back to you as soon as I have time. I love talking about this stuff. So don't hesitate to reach out. Make sure to join Fantasy Six Pack. We have all access memberships over there. Another cool feature on top of all of our rankings and tools that we have there is you get access to our Discord forum where I'm in there. So you could just DM me directly, custom things. My league is 3/4 point PPR and a full point for first down or 20 plus yards or an extra point, whatever. You can let us know more custom details and you can get better advice that's more suited for your exact league as opposed to just kind of general, here's a PPR list of rankings. Appreciate you guys tuning in and we'll be back next week.